Welcome back to The Deep End. You are listening to The Deep Dive. And if you have been tracking with us, you know we are hitting a massive milestone today.
We are.
This is the 25th Deep Dive in our Building a Human series. I mean, 25 times we have sat down to try and figure out the architecture of, well, us.
It is a significant number. And it feels appropriate, doesn't it? Because after 25 sessions of laying the groundwork, talking about biology and environment, the absorbent mind, we're finally arriving at the part of the conversation that I think most people, most parents, really struggle with the most.
Yeah.
We're moving from let's say, the theory of construction to the reality of the daily grind.
To the living room floor on a Tuesday afternoon. Absolutely. And before we get into the heavy lifting, and trust me, today is going to be heavy in the best possible way, I want to take just a brief moment to properly acknowledge the collaboration that makes this entire series possible. We are here thanks to the Al-Mahaba Foundation, and I think it's crucial to mention their ethos, which is love for all and service to all.
A beautiful guiding principle.
It really is. And we are also partnered with the Dar al-Khalima Publishing House, who provide the source texts that keep us grounded in actual science, rather than just our opinions.
And that context is so vital for today's discussion, because the material we're covering, specifically about the personality of the child, it isn't just dry clinical psychology. It is deeply, deeply rooted in that philosophy of service and of understanding.
Right.
It requires us to look at the human being through a lens of compassion, which, it aligns perfectly with that foundational mission of love for all.
Exactly. So let's get into it. The title of today's source material is Personality Deviations. Now, I have to be honest with you. When I first saw that title in the stack, I kind of braced myself. It sounds a bit clinical, maybe even a little scary. Deviation sounds like a diagnosis you really don't want to get.
It does carry a certain weight in modern English, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It sounds medical or statistical, like you're off the chart in a bad way.
Right. But let's bring it down to earth. I want to start with a scenario that I think every parent, every teacher, aunt, uncle, or heck, just anyone who has stood in line at a grocery store knows intimately.
The universal struggle.
The universal struggle. Picture it. You're in the grocery store, or maybe it's just your living room on a rainy Tuesday, and the child, your sweet, normally angelic child, suddenly transforms. It's like a switch flips.
The Jekyll and Hyde moment.
Yes. They are screaming, they are throwing themselves on the floor, or maybe it isn't the explosion, maybe it's the refusal, the stubbornness that feels like hitting a brick wall.
Or the laziness that I can't do it, the constant grating, whining.
Oh, the whining. And you look at this small human and you think, who are you? And where did my child go?
It's a genuine moment of confusion and, let's be honest, frustration for the adult.
Yes. And we have a whole vocabulary for this, don't we? We label it immediately. We say, he's being difficult. She is just so stubborn. He is lazy. She is trying to manipulate me. We group all of this under the giant catch-all umbrella of bad behavior.
It's the standard adult reaction.
Yeah.
And it's a defensive reaction, really. We see behavior that inconveniences us or that defies our adult logic, and our first instinct is to label it as a defect in the child's character.
We think, this child needs discipline.
This child needs to be fixed.
Right. If the car makes a weird noise, you fix the engine. If the child screams for an hour, you fix the behavior. Usually with a timeout or a long lecture they don't even understand.
Which is like trying to fix the check engine light by putting a piece of tape over it.
Exactly. But today's deep dive is flipping that script entirely. We're looking at sources specifically stemming from the work of Maria Montessori and The Secret of Childhood that suggest something pretty radical. The central tension we are unpacking today is this. Are these children broken? Is bad behavior just who they are?
And the short answer, based on, all of the insights from the source material, is a resounding no. They are not broken.
Yeah.
They are, to use the very specific terminology of the text, off track.
Off track. That feels so different from naughty. Naughty feels moral. It feels like a judgment. Off track feels navigational.
That is exactly the shift we need to make. It changes everything. I mean, think about it. If you're hiking and you step off the trail and get lost in the bushes, and maybe you get scratched up by thorns, you aren't bad.
No, you're just lost.
You are lost. You are in a state of deviation. This is the core concept we need to wrap our heads around today. Deviations.
Okay, let's unpack that word, deviations. Because in the Montessori context, in the context of our Building a Human series, this is a technical term. It's not just a casual word. What does it actually mean?
To understand deviation, you first have to understand what the child is supposed to be, what their baseline is. Montessori discovered, and this was a truly radical discovery at the time, and frankly, it still surprises people today, that the child's true personality, their essential nature, is inherently peaceful.
Peaceful.
It is focused, it is happy, it's cooperative.
Wait, hold on. Inherently peaceful? I think there are a few parents listening right now who are looking at their toddlers destroying the living room and thinking, you have got to be kidding me.
I know. I know it sounds idealistic, maybe even naive. But the science here, the observation, suggests that the chaos we see, the aggression, the fear, the intense possessiveness, these are not the child's nature. They are a mask.
A mask. That is a powerful metaphor. So the tantrum isn't the face.
The tantrum is never the face. The bad behavior is a construct. It is something the child has built up, or rather something that is formed over the child's true nature. It's a defense mechanism. The source material is very, very clear on this. These behaviors are a cry for help.
So the screaming tantrum isn't the child being evil or manipulative. It's the child basically shouting, help, I'm lost.
Precisely. The premise is that the child's spirit has been blocked. Every human being has a developmental path, a drive to construct themselves. We've talked about this in previous episodes, the HORM, that vital life drive. When that drive is thwarted, when the environment doesn't provide what the soul needs for its work, the energy that should go into growth, into construction, it has to go somewhere else. It doesn't just vanish. It mutates. It becomes a deviation.
It's like a river. I love the river analogy. If you dam up a river, the water doesn't just disappear. It floods the banks, it gets murky, it causes damage, it becomes destructive.
That is a beautiful and incredibly accurate analogy. The bad behavior is the flood. It's the misplaced energy of a spirit that has been denied its meaningful work. The child isn't trying to be difficult. The child is suffering from a lack of spiritual anchoring.
Wow, this is a huge shift in perspective. I mean, if I think my child is being a brat, I get angry, I get offensive. But if I think my child is drowning in a flood of their own blocked energy, I get compassionate. I want to help.
And that is the shift from judge to guide. It allows us, as the adults, to step back and stop taking the behavior personally. The child isn't attacking you. They are struggling with themselves.
Okay, so we've established that the bad behavior is a mask. It's not the kid's real face. But masks come in different shapes and sizes, right? The source material outlines some very specific types of deviations. I really want to dig into these because I think our listeners will recognize them instantly. It's like reading a field guide to household chaos.
We absolutely should. Because until you can name the deviation, until you can see the pattern, you can't understand the cry for help. You have to be able to diagnose the specific type of lost they are.
Okay. The first one mentioned in our stack is something called the fugue. Now, usually when I hear fugue, I think of Bach. I think of complicated organ music. But we aren't talking about counterpoint here.
No. Though the musical term does imply a sort of flight or chase, and that's not entirely unrelated. In this psychological context, a fugue refers to a state of mental scatteredness. It is, in essence, a flight from reality.
Scatteredness. Okay, so what does that look like in the living room? Give me the play-by-play.
It looks like the child who cannot settle. They pick up a truck, roll it once, and drop it. Then they run to the window to look at a bird for 2 seconds. Then they go poke the dog. Then they whine that they are hungry, but when you give them an apple, they take one bite and leave it on the couch.
Oh, I have seen this. It's that frenetic energy. It's not playing. It's like vibrating. It makes you tired just watching it.
Exactly. It is a profound lack of engagement. The child drifts from one object to another without ever truly connecting with any of them. And here's the key identifier for the fugue state: the tragedy of unfinished cycles.
Unfinished cycles. That sounds almost poetic, but in practice, it's just incredibly frustrating.
It is the definition of unfulfillment. They never finish what they start. They open the box of crayons, but don't draw. They start a drawing and walk away after one line. They pour the water, but don't drink it.
And as the parent, you look at that and you think, why are you making such a mess? Why can't you just sit down and play with one thing? We usually interpret this as a discipline issue. We say, sit still.
Or, and this is so common, parents will say, my child is bored. They have a room full of toys, the finest educational materials money can buy, shelves stacked to the ceiling, and the child comes out whining, I'm bored.
Get the classic complaint, I have nothing to do, and you're looking at a mountain of things to do.
But the analysis here is fascinating. It's not a lack of things to do. It is a lack of connection to what is available. The fugue is a defense mechanism against an environment that doesn't feed the soul.
So it's not boredom in the sense of I need more stuff.
Not at all. The child is physically present, but mentally they are on the run. They are in flight. They're taking refuge in constant motion because stillness is too painful when there is no meaningful work to anchor them. The emptiness is inside, so they try to escape it by moving around outside.
That is heartbreaking when you put it that way.
Yeah.
We think they're just being annoying or hyperactive, but they are actually frantically searching for an anchor. They are trying to find something, anything that makes them feel real.
They are searching for themselves.
Yeah.
And because they can't find an activity that hooks their deep attention, perhaps because the toys are too simple or too chaotic or they're broken or just not what they need developmentally at that exact moment, they just bounce off the surface of everything. They become like a stone skipping over water, never sinking in.
Never making a real impact. So that's the fugue, the scattered, flitting mask. But there's another one mentioned in the sources that feels almost like the complete opposite. It's not high energy, it's low energy, the psychic barrier.
The psychic barrier. This is a subtle one and so often misdiagnosed. This, I would argue, is the silent killer of potential
And this is the child who just says, I can't.
before they even try.
Yes. You put a puzzle in front of them.
Mm.
Or you ask them to put on their shoes, a task you know they're physically capable of. You have seen them do it 100 times before. And the immediate reaction is a slump. The shoulders go down, the voice gets whiny. I can't, it's too hard. You do it.
And what do we label that?
Laziness, stubbornness, defiance.
Laziness or lack of grit. We think, come on, buck up, try harder. You're not even trying.
We get so frustrated because we see it as a refusal to exert effort. We think they are trying to trick us into doing the work for them to get out of it.
But if we look at this through the lens of the psychic barrier, it's not a refusal, it is a paralysis.
A paralysis. That is a very strong word.
It is. It is a wall that has gone up in the child's mind. The source material explains that this barrier is the result of an environment that, again, did not allow for deep concentration, but specifically one where the child perhaps was judged or interrupted or not given the time to master things at their own pace.
So they just freeze.
They freeze. The energy meant for building a human, that forward-moving energy that drives a child to conquer their environment, it dissipates. It turns into withdrawal. The I can't isn't a lie. In that moment, psychologically, they really can't. They can't cross the barrier because they have been conditioned to be terrified of the attempt.
It's almost like, okay, imagine you are an adult and you are asked to give a speech to 1,000 people. You physically can walk onto the stage and speak English. The muscles work. But you might be frozen backstage saying, I can't do it. It's fear. It's a block.
That is a perfect comparison. We accept that stage fright is real and powerful for adults, but when a child has life fright, we call them lazy.
Life rate. That's good. And I want to dig a little deeper here into how we, the well-meaning adults, might actually be the ones building this wall, because the sources hint at this pretty strongly.
They do more than hint. They are quite explicit. Often the psychic barrier is built by adult impatience or misplaced helpfulness.
Walk us through that dynamic. How does my trying to be helpful end up creating paralysis?
Okay, think about the rhythm of adult life.
Yeah.
It is linear, it is efficient, it is goal-oriented. Our goal is shoes on feet because the bus is coming in 3 minutes.
Right. We're always on a clock. Rush, rush, rush. Efficiency is the god we worship.
Exactly. But the child's life, the whole building a human process, is not about efficiency. It is about mastery. It is about the process. It takes a child 5 minutes, maybe 10, to put on a shoe that an adult can put on in 5 seconds. For the child, the goal isn't shoes on feet. The goal is, I am learning to control my fingers and this lace and this Velcro. The struggle is the work.
So we see them struggling and we step in.
We step in. We say, here, let me do it. Or we sigh loudly. Or we tap our foot. Or we say, you're too slow.
We're going to be late.
And that energy, that impatience, or even that helpfulness that is actually an interruption, sends a very clear message. The message is, you are not capable. Your effort is an inconvenience to me. You are failing at this.
Ouch. That hits home. I think we've all done that.
Over time, if that happens enough, the child internalizes it. They start to believe it. They think, why should I even try? I'm just going to fail, or dad's going to get annoyed, or mom's just going to do it for me anyway, so the wall goes up. I can't.
It's a protective measure. It's a preemptive surrender. I won't try, so I can't fail.
Precisely. It preserves their dignity in a very twisted way. If I don't try, you can't criticize my attempt.
So we have the fugue, the scattered flight, we have the psychic barrier, the frozen wall. Both are masks. Both are these deviations.
And both are symptoms. That is the crucial takeaway from this section. You cannot treat the symptom. If you yell at the child in the fugue to sit still, you are just physically restraining them. You aren't curing the internal scatteredness. You're just putting a lid on a boiling pot.
Right. And if you force the child with the psychic barrier to just do it, you might get the shoes on today, but you haven't removed the fear. You might have even reinforced it.
Exactly. You're just polishing the mask. You aren't seeing the real face underneath.
Okay, I want to move to the next section because this one, oh man, this one is the source of probably 50% of all toddler conflicts on the planet. The source material calls it the myth of possessiveness.
Ah, yes. The mind phase, the era of the
The
dragon.
mine phenomenon. You know the scene. Every listener knows the scene. Two kids, one toy. It doesn't even matter what the toy is. It could be a stick. It could be a broken piece of plastic they found on the floor. But suddenly, it is the most important object in the entire universe.
It's the one ring.
Yes, mine.
Yeah.
Screaming, crying, clutching.
And pushing and shoving and sometimes biting, it can get physical very quickly.
And as adults, we look at this and our brains immediately jump to a conclusion. My child is selfish. Or even broader, humans are naturally greedy. We think we are seeing the raw, ugly nature of humanity that we are born to hoard.
It confirms a very cynical view of human nature, doesn't it? We think possessiveness is a fundamental human instinct that must be socialized out of us. We think we have to teach them to share because naturally they are greedy little monsters.
Right. We think civilization is just this thin veneer over our natural selfishness.
Sharing is caring, we chant, while we're prying the toy out of their death grip.
Exactly. But the Montessori view, the view in our deep dive today, says that this entire interpretation is completely fundamentally wrong.
Completely wrong. Possessiveness, that extreme, anxious possessiveness, is a deviation. It is not nature.
Explain that, because it feels so natural in the moment. It feels primal. How is that a deviation and not just baseline humanity?
Think back to the concept of the void we just talked about. We talked about how the child has this immense drive to work, to develop, to build themselves. When that drive is blocked, when they don't have a purpose or a job that fills them up, they feel an internal emptiness.
A hole in the soul.
A hole in the soul, yes. And how do humans, even adult humans, try to fill a hole in the soul?
Retail therapy. We go shopping. We buy things we don't need. We eat things we shouldn't.
Exactly. We buy things, we hoard things, we accumulate. When we feel unfulfilled internally, we try to compensate externally. If I own this car, I will feel important. If I own this new gadget, I will feel cutting edge. The child is doing the exact same thing, just with toys.
So the screaming for the toy, it's not about the toy.
It is rarely about the actual toy. It is about the mechanism of compensation. They're trying to fill that internal void with external objects. They hoard toys they don't even play with. Have you noticed that?
Oh, absolutely. The child who gathers all the cars in a pile and just sits on them like a dragon on a treasure hoard. They aren't driving the cars. They're not making vroom vroom sounds. They are just guarding them.
Ownership becomes a substitute for engagement. And that is the critical distinction that the expert sources highlight over and over again. Possession versus usage.
Possession versus usage. Okay, this seems like a really vital concept to grasp. Break that down for us.
A normalized child, and we will get to that term normalization in a bit, but for now, let's just say a child who is balanced and happy. They care about the experience of using the object. They want the shovel because they want the feeling of digging. They want the block because they have an idea for a tower they want to build.
They are focused on the verb, not the noun. The doing, not the having.
Ideally, yes. But the deviated child, the child who is off track, they care about the legalistic title of owning it. This is mine. It doesn't matter if I'm using it. It doesn't matter if it's been sitting in the corner for 3 weeks. I need to possess it to feel secure. I need to hold it to prove I exist.
That is, wow, that is actually a very sophisticated psychological critique. It's almost like the child is having a tiny existential crisis and trying to solve it with property rights.
It is exactly that. It's an existential patch. And this explains so clearly why forcing a child to share rarely works in the long run.
Because you're asking them to give up their security blanket. You're ripping off the patch.
You are asking them to give up the only thing that is making them feel whole in that moment. If a child is hoarding because they feel empty inside, taking the toy away just makes them feel emptier and more panicked. You are confirming their worldview that the world is a hostile, scarce place where people take things from you.
So, true sharing.
True sharing cannot be forced. The source material is adamant about this. Sharing becomes natural, becomes spontaneous, only when the spirit is satisfied.
When your bucket is full, you don't mind spilling a little water for someone else.
Precisely. A child who is deeply engaged in their work, who feels capable and connected and full, doesn't need to hoard. Their internal life is full. You'll often see a normalized child casually hand a toy to another child simply because they are done with it. There's no drama, there is no mind, because their identity isn't wrapped up in that plastic object.
That is the goal right there. I mean, that's
Yeah.
the dream, to have a child who shares not because they are terrified of getting in trouble, but because they're so secure in themselves that generosity is just easy, a natural overflow.
And that brings us to the most important question of this entire deep dive. It's the so what question. We have identified the problem. We've established that bad behavior is a mask. We've described the specific masks, things like the fugue, the psychic barrier, and possessiveness. And we know the cause is a blocked spirit.
So, the million-dollar question, how do we fix it?
Or, to use our earlier language, how do we help them get back on track? How do we help them take off the mask?
Right. And I think I know how most of us try to fix it. We rely on the traditional toolkit. We lecture. We don't hit in this house. Sharing is nice. Or we punish. Timeouts. Taking away the exits. We count to 3 in a scary voice.
The wrong approach, as our outline calls it. And it's wrong not because it's mean necessarily, but because it's ineffective at solving the root problem.
Why is it wrong? I mean, let's be real. It often stops the behavior in the moment. If I put a kid in timeout, they usually stop hitting.
But do they stop wanting to hit? Or do they just stop because they are overpowered and afraid of the consequence?
Oof. Good point. It's compliance, not change. It's a ceasefire, not peace.
The source material warns against this standard discipline. The punishments, the lectures, the scolding, because they all address the mask, not the spirit underneath. You cannot punish a deviation away.
If your child has a fever, you don't yell at the thermometer for reading 102. You treat the infection.
That's it exactly. If you punish a child for being in a fugue, being scattered, you are just adding fear and shame to the chaos they already feel. If you punish a child for possessiveness, you are just validating their deep-seated insecurity about scarcity. You are suppressing the symptom, but the disease, the spiritual emptiness, remains, and it will pop up somewhere else.
Okay, so if that's the wrong way, what is the right way? What is the cure? The Foundation's philosophy you mentioned in the intro has a specific phrase for this.
Yes, the Foundation believes that service provides the path to normalization. But in the context of the child's daily life, the mechanism for this cure is very, very specific. It is one thing: deep concentration.
Deep concentration, not being good, not sitting still, not listening to mommy. Concentration.
Concentration on meaningful work. This is the magic bullet in the Montessori philosophy. This is the medicine. This is the thing that dissolves the mask.
Okay, let's define work here, though. Because when I hear work, I think of taxes or laundry or spreadsheets I don't want to do. I don't think of a 3-year-old. Are we talking about setting into the coal mines?
No, no coal mines. It's a fair question because the word is so loaded for us. In this context, work is not drudgery. It is not employment. It is activity that engages the whole self. It is purpose. It is what the child is instinctively driven to do to build their own brain and body.
Okay, give me an example of what this work looks like for a deviated child who is engaging in it. What am I looking for?
It could be washing a small table with a small sponge and a bowl of water. It could be carefully arranging flowers in a tiny vase. It could be solving a complex puzzle. It could be polishing a piece of wood. It could be buttoning a shirt on a frame. It is any task that has a clear beginning, middle, and end, and that requires the child's hands and mind to work together in a focused way.
And why is this the cure? Why does washing a table stop a tantrum? It seems so unrelated.
Because of what happens inside the brain and the soul during that process. When a child finds a task that fascinates them, not just entertains them, but truly fascinates them, they enter a state of flow.
Flow. Like athletes or artists talk about being in the zone.
Exactly. The naughtiness disappears because the energy that was fueling the naughtiness is finally being channeled into constructive work. The aggression melts away without a single lecture. The fear evaporates because they are proving their competence to themselves with every successful swipe of the sponge.
It's like the dam breaks, but instead of a destructive flood, the water flows into a turbine and generates light.
That is it exactly. The source material uses a really beautiful metaphor here. It calls work a spiritual bath.
A spiritual bath. I love that imagery. It sounds so refreshing.
Think about how you feel after a long, hard day where nothing went right. You feel grimy spiritually. You feel agitated. Your mind is all over the place, jumping from one worry to the next.
Yep. I feel like static on a TV screen. Just noise.
Now imagine really diving into a project you love. Maybe it's gardening or painting or baking bread or even organizing your garage if you're that kind of person. You get lost in it for 2 hours. You don't look at your phone. You don't think about bills. How do you feel afterwards?
Cleansed. Calm. centered, sane again.
Mm.
Like the static is gone and there's a clear picture.
That is the spiritual bath. Focused work cleanses the deviations from the personality. It washes away the grime of the fugue. It scrubs off the fear of the psychic barrier. It rinses away the anxiety of possessiveness. And what's left is the true personality underneath.
So the instruction to parents isn't control your child, it's feed your child's soul.
Yes, don't fight the behavior that's fighting the symptom. Feed the soul with real work. That's the cure. When you see the fugue, don't yell. Observe. What can I offer them that will hook their interest? What can I put in their hands that is challenging enough to stop the flitting?
And when you see the psychic barrier, don't push, don't force, invite. Make the work so simple and accessible that they can't fail. Let them just dip a toe in the spiritual bath until they feel safe enough to dive in.
And when you see the possessiveness, don't preach about sharing. Find them a job. Give them something to do that fills them up, not just something to hold.
It sounds so simple on one level, but it requires such a massive shift in how we view our role as parents. We aren't police officers, we're matchmakers. We're trying to match the child with the work their soul needs.
And when that match happens, normalization occurs. The child becomes normal in the Montessori sense, which means peaceful, happy, kind, and generous. Not because you force them to be, but because that is who they really are when they aren't starving for purpose.
It's a message of hope, really. It means the difficult days aren't a life sentence. It means the bad child isn't actually bad. They're just waiting for us to give them the right tools.
They're waiting for us to guide them back to the path, back to themselves.
This has been heavy, but in a good way. It's a lot to process, and it challenges so many of our instincts.
It absolutely does. It asks us to pause instead of react. But the reward for that pause is, well, it's seeing that mask fall away and meeting the real person underneath for the first time.
So let's recap the big insights from today, just to nail them down.
I think we should. First and foremost, the child is not bad. The child is lost or off track. The deviations we see are cries for help.
Okay. Second, the behaviors we hate, the scattering, the I can't, the greed, these are masks. They are defenses against an environment that feels empty or hostile.
And third, and this is the practical part, the parent's role is not to be a judge or a disciplinarian, but a guide. And the primary tool we use is not punishment, but meaningful work. Deep concentration is the spiritual bath that restores the child to their true self.
I think I'm going to look at my kids very differently tonight when I get home. And honestly, I'm going to look at my own frustrations differently too.
It applies to all of us, doesn't it? We all have our own deviations when we lose our sense of purpose. We all start flitting or freezing or hoarding.
That is so true. Absolutely. Now, looking ahead, we have unpacked the bad behavior. We've looked behind the mask. But next time, we are flipping the lens again.
Yes, I'm really looking forward to this one. In the next episode of Building a Human, we're going to talk about the child as a teacher.
The child is a teacher. I like the sound of that.
We so often think we are the ones raising them, but if we pay attention, if we really learn to observe, we realize the little ones are actually raising the big ones. We have so much to learn from them about presence and joy and concentration.
I can't wait for that. It sounds like a perfect follow-up to today's deep dive.
It is the other half of the circle. First, we learn to see them clearly, then we learn what they have to show us.
Now, for those of you listening who are having that aha moment and want to go deeper because we can only cover so much in a deep dive, where should they go?
You need to go to the source. The wisdom we discussed today comes primarily from The Secret of Childhood by Maria Montessori. It is a foundational text. It's not just a how-to book, it's a why book.
And we have a specific place for you to find it and other resources.
Yes, we highly recommend you visit the Dar El Kalima library at darylkalima.com. They have the resources you need to really understand the psychological secrets of child behavior. It's not just a bookstore. It's a resource for this kind of rigorous, compassionate thinking.
Support the wisdom, build the human. That's the goal.
That is the whole goal.
Thank you all for listening. Thank you for being open to this, to the idea that maybe, just maybe, the stubbornness is actually a request for connection.
And remember, the mask is not the face.
We will see you next time on Building a Human.
Love for all.
And service for everyone.